Hey, Fellowship Kids team. Autumn here to talk to you about the lesson we'll be teaching in our kids' classes this coming Sunday, September 8th. Last Sunday, we launched the Biggest Story curriculum, and I think it went really well. I'm excited about this curriculum. I love the content, the emphasis, the high view of Scripture, and I love the layout. I hope it is a good tool for those of you who teach our classes and that it's encouraging to help you grow in faith, to engage this big story that's given to us in Scripture, and then to lead your kids to do the same. Throughout this first year, we're going to have a three-part emphasis. So the first is an emphasis that comes to us via the content, and that is the Bible is one big story that leads to Jesus. Each week, as we look at a new story, a new part of the Bible, a new part of the narrative, we'll ask, how does this story fit into the biggest story? And the second emphasis is on prayer and memorizing our monthly verse. So last Sunday, the kids who were in class got to make a journal, decorate it, label it with their name, and then they affixed a pocket inside the journal that they'll use to collect memory verse cards as they come out month by month throughout the whole year. Our third emphasis is on a classroom to home connection. We'll emphasize this in various ways, mostly through our newsletter, but the Biggest Story curriculum provides excellent resources, excellent supplemental resources that families can use at home to easily engage what we learned on Sunday and to weave that into their regular weekly rhythms at home. And we hope that many of our parents will take that on and do that. Back to the journal. One thing you might see in your classrooms this week is this journal kit. So we know last week was Labor Day. Many of our kids did not get to make a journal. So at checkout this week and in the weeks to come, ask parents if their students have had a chance to make a memory verse and prayer journal. If they haven't, just hand them one of these kits and they can put it together at home and then participate in that throughout the year. Now to this week's lesson, it's the beginning. We're starting in Genesis 1 and 2. And the lessons are written for kindergarten through fifth graders. So our toddler class, our older toddler class at North Metro, that includes our 2s and 3s. At South Broadway, that's 2.5-year-olds and older through 3s. The lessons are a little bit above them. So we have adapted them. And the lesson for our friendly fish at North Metro and koalas at South Broadway will look like this each week. It is based on the same passage or story that our older kids are covering via the Biggest Story. And in this week's lesson, we suggest that those of you teaching our fish at North Metro or our koalas out at South Broadway tell the story or teach the story in one of two ways. The first suggestion is to use one of these posters from the Biggest Story poster pack and then to read from the text in your lesson. So we rewrote the lesson to be simplified for your little students, and you could read that out loud and hold this up as a visual aid. Or you could opt to read the story out of one of our other storybook Bibles. The Beginner's Gospel Story Bible is written at a great level for our littler students, so you could read the story out of this. Now for our older kids, your lesson for those of you teaching preschool and older, so 4s, 5s, and up, will look like this. And each of our lessons is constructed in the same way. There's a section that says before the lesson that encourages you to read the passage, to meditate on it, think about it, and pray before you head into your class on Sunday. And I would strongly encourage you to do that. And then the next section, which goes into the teach, explains the big picture that's helping us grasp where this fits in the overall storyline of Scripture. And then there's a section that says teach the story. As you look through the lesson, you'll notice it says share the story in one of these three ways. Read the passage, read from the Biggest Story Bible Storybook, or play the Biggest Story video. So as you're prepping, decide which way you're going to communicate the story. This lesson does cover Genesis 1 and 2, and it is asking us to do quite a few things. These first few lessons are very important. They set the stage for all of the story that is to follow, but this lesson is asking us to do a lot. So as you read through the content, think carefully about what you want to emphasize, what you want your students to walk away with. Here are a few of the things the lesson is asking us to do. First, it's asking us to give a simple overview of the Bible. It talks about how it's constructed, that it's 66 books, that there are various sections, and you can emphasize that if it is something that works well in your class for your age of students. But we do want to give our children a sense of the fact that the Bible is a work of literature that resulted from divine and human partnership. In other words, the Bible is a special kind of book. And the second thing this lesson is asking us to do is introduce students to the Pentateuch. In Hebrew, the first 5 books of the Bible are called the Torah. Commonly in English, we call this the Pentateuch. Penta means 5. And we're referring to the first 5 books of the Bible. These first 5 books of the Bible include some of the foundational and most well-known and loved Bible stories. So, first, overview of the Bible. Second, a simple understanding of the Pentateuch. The third thing this lesson is asking us to do is to teach our kids about God's good creation. This is the beginning of the story, and it's the creation account in Genesis 1 and 2, and that's what we're teaching. The fourth thing that this lesson is asking us to do is to convey this critically important message about the image of God, sometimes referred to as the imago Dei, which is the Latin way to say image of God. So we want our students to understand that every person, Adam and Eve in the creation account in Genesis 1 and 2, and all of us are made in God's image and made to reflect our good Creator. And then the fifth thing this lesson is asking us to do over the course of this lesson, and then the next 2, is to set up the central plot line of Scripture. So the fact that Adam and Eve were made in the image of God, that a good God created a good world and placed these people in it who were good and made to reflect Him, is critically important for understanding what follows. So that's the last thing this lesson is asking us to do. And the big truth this week is a very good God makes a very good world with humans as His very good image bearers. I said this week and the next couple of weeks are very important. And in this section of the Biggest Story Bible Storybook that introduces the Pentateuch, which is part 1, there's this paragraph, which I love and agree with, so I'm going to read it for you. If we're going to make sense of the storyline of the Bible, we must take time to understand how the story begins. Knowledge of the Pentateuch is essential for being mature, biblically literate Christians. In the first 5 books of the Bible, we discover not only how the universe came into being, how we came into being, and how sin entered the world, but we also learn about God's plan to set His people free and set them on a path of obedience and blessing. And so, as you prepare your lesson this week, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you to experience the renewal of the gospel in your heart and life. And I'm praying for excitement and vision for teaching our students in class this week.